Welcome to our Relationship Breakthrough Show, Richard. Thank you for coming to join us.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm very excited to introduce our guest of the day, Richard. He is a Family Constellations facilitator, and you're also trained, Richard, in the journey and shamanic healing.
Correct. Family Constellations is the main modality that I run workshops in and work with people. The journey is an emotional release therapy, which was the first training I actually did. And I actually use that and blend it with Family Constellations because the actual getting to the root cause is one thing. Getting to the emotional aspect of the root cause is, from my experience, something that takes constellations into a new, I don't want to say a new level, but you can really explore emotionally really deeply. And then, lastly, shamanic healings. I've trained in that because that goes beyond constellations, where we can go back further than the traditional 5 to 7 family generations, and we look even further back into the field to see what's actually moving in our ancestors, a very distant relationship.
Wow. I love the distinction that you've just made between the getting to the root of the cause and getting to into the emotional side of the root of the cause, which is very different, and it's a really great point. I would like you, Richard, to explain a little bit more why it's so important to dig into our family system, family of origin system, and to do what? Why would people do that? What are the benefits?
Probably the easiest way I can answer that is why I got into Family Constellations.
I love to hear that.
Having started out by working through a lot of issues myself, doing the journey work, looking at the emotional root cause, I became aware there's still something more that I wasn't looking at. And for me specifically, I'm actually adopted. And what I discovered was, using the journey, it's brilliant across the board, but what Family Constellations offered me was getting to the root with my biological family. And this is one of the keys with Family Constellations. You're dealing with your biological roots, and you're working with the DNA, and you're working with the field of energy, which is your ancestry. So for me, being adopted, I can work through certain issues, but without the knowledge and awareness that Constellations offers of your actual biological family, you can somehow be avoiding certain root core key issues. So that's how I came to Constellations, and working with that modality has meant I've been able to look personally into my family history. And it does help in some regard that I've met my biological parents now. But one of the beauties of Constellations, you don't need to do it with the people directly. And also you don't need to know these people. So when we look in our ancestry, you can go back to look at your great-grandparents. When you're working with the knowing field, they're placed in a constellation, and the energy that is being transmitted through that constellation, that's what you're working with, and that's a really pure, clean energy. That is, for me, from my example, it's been really important, because then I'm looking into my ancestry, and I know then what is being shown in the constellation is actually what has happened in my family. And because I don't know these people, I haven't got any of that flavor of trying to influence it, because I don't know. And the people who are representing parts of my family or different areas, they will then show where the blockages are, where my family is stuck. And the reason I would say it's really important is where we can get stuck in our lives, in our families, in our relationships, in our jobs, in our health. All these aspects, without looking in the family where the trauma originated, and that has to be the biological family, then we look, and it could be we look back 3 or 4, 5 generations, and we look, where's the blockage? Where's it stemming from? Where does it originate? And that for me is the huge power Constellations offers.
I love it. I love it. Yes, that's right. It's really, it's a modality, therapeutic modality that I absolutely love because of what you just said. Because if you cannot have a conversation with someone who is dead, who you don't even know if it's alive, or maybe someone who is alive but doesn't want to have the conversation, there's so much more that people can do. And being adopted, I mean, how could you do? Where you're coming from, where these issues are coming from. So
And actually, with regard to that, and I think it might link into what we're going to talk about a bit more in depth today.
Exactly, yeah.
When you don't know where this originates in your family, where you're looking, when constellation shows you, you can rely on that information. I've then had the constellation work supported through my actual biological family. When I then have met them, I then see certain patterns, and I see then actually where it's come from, but it didn't come from me looking there first. It came from looking in a constellation first. It gets revealed, and then it's a weird synchronicity or synchronistic sort of like overtone.
Thank you so much for saying this, making this point, because some people, they're very matter of fact. They're very factual. They like logic, they like proof, science, and all that. And that can be really good for many things. And sometimes we don't have evidence, we don't have proofs, we don't have, the science doesn't even back certain things, but we can choose to rely on these things. It's a choice. We can choose to trust this process, to have faith and go run with this, with the resonance of the field, or we can choose to keep stuck in pain if you don't have other resources. So if you don't believe this, just give yourself permission to give it a go, because you may be really blown away, literally, with the magic of the family constellations. And I have seen you, Richard, doing that in person. I've actually been one of the representatives and worked with you as well in one of your workshops. And it was really, really magic. It was magic. And it was powerful. So,
Well,
yeah.
I'm glad that was your experience. At the end of the day, what I would say as a facilitator is I hold the space for the magic to happen in the room. The magic happens with the people representing. They're standing in the field. They're the people with the information. My job as a facilitator is to interpret and understand that. So for me, there, as I say, I feel it in my body. There's a magic that takes place in the space. And yeah, for me, I'm really happy that that's been your experience. That was my experience and still is whenever I'm facilitating. Or as I continue to do, I'm representing, or I am a client seeking. I'm always, there's always more areas I need to look at and clear out. So I'm on both sides, and that's why I love it.
That's right, yes. Great. So I would love to ask you now to connect what you do as a family constellations facilitator with the topic of the day, which is the invisible twin and the survivor twin. There is something that happens when we are being conceived, and this moment is critical because it could have very serious impact, a very serious impact in our future life, in the life of the survivor twin. Could you explain a little bit of that? What is that syndrome and the impact of that in all the parts involved?
Yeah, it's something that's still only being addressed within the last few years, really, as people become more aware of different ways to look in the family to actually see where there might be issues. And one aspect, the vanishing twin, there's a few names for it actually. There's the vanishing twin, I call it the invisible twin, that's just my own personal name. But vanishing twin syndrome. And I have direct experience of this. And going back to what I was saying before, when the information is revealed in a constellation, we rely on that information. It's not our mind creating this. So when you see this actually revealed in a constellation, and I know it mainly through that lens, you know what's actually happened.
Yeah.
It hasn't been manufactured. I couldn't know that about a person when I'm facilitating. In the same way, this person who's ever met the client, they don't know that information. The reason why I mention that is I think it's quite important for anybody who this could be a topic for them. They might not be aware it's a topic. So how do you find out about it? My experience as being constellations reveals and shows this. And one of the main reasons from what I've perceived and my experience is it can unfold in your life and affect your life in many, many ways. What I'd say first of all, though, is there is trauma in the body. We store trauma, we have trauma, we all have it. I'm no different to anybody else. I still have it, and I'm still working through it. And one of the first traumas is if there's any form of separation from the mother.
Yeah.
So as a baby, when we're first born, it can be in the first minutes, hours. If there's any separation there, and in the modern world we live in, we're in hospitals, instead of the baby going straight to that caregiver, they're quite often taken away, clean. And it could be only like a matter of minutes before, goes back to the mother. But in that moment there, trauma can happen. Also, in then the days, or hours, days, weeks after that, if there's separation with the mother, then that bond is so key and so crucial that the body and the being and that soul experience it as a traumatic experience. So that's the mother. What's key, though, is in a pregnancy, when you have this vanishing twin syndrome, what is not well documented is of pregnancies, between 10 to 15% of those, actually, there are 2 fetuses inside the womb. You might be born, and yes, when twins come, everybody sees this, but in 10 to 15% of all pregnancies, then there is another twin that is actually one that vanishes or disappears. And if you are the survivor of that, it's actually the same experience as a survivor as if you are a twin in the world. It's just your twin died. And we all can resonate with how intuitive twins are when they both survive, how they can hear what the other one's thinking, how they can be so similar in their mannerisms. They're so connected. It's the same energy with that twin, because when we look in constellations, whether or not a soul survives or is dead, that dead soul is the same as all of our ancestors who've died, who've gone before us. And they are always present. They are always around us. So that twin that you were separated from, if you consider the separation anxiety from mother, if you then have a twin that is separated from you inside the womb, you experience that as a huge loss. And inside the womb there, it's my understanding when I've researched this, that in a vanishing twin syndrome, the other twin, the other soul, usually goes within the first 2 to 3 weeks of the pregnancy as well. So a mother wouldn't even be aware that there were twins inside. And the first time that she might be aware of it, but even then probably isn't fully, is if there's any discharge of blood or mucus. But that's normal anyway in any pregnancy. And these are the sort of areas where people are only just catching on to this now. But the ramifications for that are huge for the survivor and the type of issues they might then have to contend with in life.
Yeah, I'm very keen to hear those challenges, really, definitely. I also relate to that. I would love to hear what you think are the impacts on the survivor twin.
one of the first impacts on a survivor twin is the initial sense of loss. And it's like they're missing someone or something in their life. So on one hand, they're alive, but if they haven't been aware of this other soul.
Exactly.
So without that knowledge, they can be living their life, but there's something pulling at them. They can be unhappy in their lives. There can be a sense of loneliness.
Yes.
There's something missing. There's a quality missing.
It's the longing.
There's a longing for something or someone.
Yeah.
Quite often, there'll be the presumption it's something. And then it's actually, well, who is missing? And this is where we look in constellations. What or who is actually missing? And it's something that, if you wanted to look at it from the mental health perspective, this is going to affect you psychologically, but you don't know what is affecting you. And so a lot of people go through therapy, they'll go through counsellors, psychotherapists.
Exactly.
They will go to these people to reach out to look for something, but they can't quite put their finger on what it is that they are actually trying to address. And so it can be depression. It might even be addiction. It could be obsession. But you feel there's something missing in you and you're looking for it. You can go looking for it in the world. And some people can spend their entire life looking for someone else.
Totally.
Which, I will put my hand up to that as well. And this is where you start getting to complex relational issues.
Yeah.
Where if you're trying to seek this person, and ultimately at a soul level, you're trying to find that twin in life. And one of those areas there where you're seeking that, you're trying to fill something in you. And one of those things you could be feeling is a guilt because you survived.
Yes.
You aren't aware of it though. There might be some shame or some guilt in you, but you go to a therapist and you say, I'm suffering from guilt, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
The chances are they're not going to actually explore that area.
But they have an idea.
My experience has been, I've seen this in constellations, this has affected me, so I resonate with this. Where do you even begin to have that conversation? If you're not aware of it, you can't go to someone and say, I want to look at this. You can only say, I'm depressed. So, but what's at the root cause of that depression or that loneliness? That's where, when you work with the field, the knowing field, and work with that in constellations, when that gets shown, and this has been documented, there's a sense of relief when people in constellations have actually stepped in as this twin is missing. The client who's looking just relaxes and the anxiety can fall away when they finally can be at peace with what the actual issue is.
I love this, Richard. I want to tell you how I came to know about the survivor twin, the lost twin, the vanishing twin syndrome, because there may be people listening to us right now who are gonna go through exactly what I went through. I wasn't even doing any family constellation. I was just doing my training in family constellations when the teacher mentioned this. Just that. There was no field and therapy going on. I was just on my desk, nice and happy, learning, and all of a sudden, tears. I just had such a strong reaction. The feel is everywhere. And that's it. And because I'm an action taker, I took action and I bought the book, the Lonely Twin is called, or I think, anyways. And I just had such a massive purge, crying throughout the whole book. I read it in 2 days, the fastest time I've ever read a book. And then I saw you in this fest, Co-dependency, where we went last summer, and then synchronicity starts to happen. You told me about this, and here we are. So if someone is resonating with this now, please get in touch with Richard. Don't hesitate, because this could be what is going on with your challenges. It could not be, but it's so worth exploring it.
And I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think when you've personally gone through something, and it can come up when you're least expecting it. And the tears can come, and that was my experience as well, where I'd always been aware, I've always had this sense of someone else, but I just thought that was in my mind telling myself a story, so I kind of ignored it. But similar fashion to you, it came up for me when doing constellation work, and the moment I realised it, I actually wrote a poem actually off the back of this, but the tears came for me because, and as I say it, it goes right down my back as well.
I am trying to contain myself as well.
Yeah, it's like a part of you kind of like comes back in alignment, and you can't change it. Is one of the key things. We're not looking to change anything. We can't change what's actually happened. But this missing twin, for me then, when I become aware of it, and when I became aware of it, so many little threads started to slot into place for me.
Yes.
And all we're doing is reconnecting with love. And that's one of the keys, if not the key, to constellation work. We're looking where the flow of love has been broken, distorted, whatever, however it's taken place. So with a twin like this, when that flow isn't there, we're out of alignment. And my experience was, once I could take that back in and actually feel that energy, then I feel the flow of love coming back into me. And actually what I then did off the back of that, I actually then went up into the mountains, because I love going into the mountains. And for me, being in nature is key, particularly in this sort of topic. And I actually then made an altar up in the mountains in the rocks. And it was strange, because having made an altar, I then actually said that this is where I would like to then be buried, back beside her. Because for me, it was a female.
That's right.
So, and then I wrote a poem afterwards, which was linked to this, how I'd actually looked around the world, in people, in places, trying to find this person. And this is the slight danger, and I don't know if, I'm happy to share this, that my experience has been, then I would look for this in my relationships with women. And this is where we can get really entangled, where we might be drawn to a person and we feel this connection, but the connection might not be actually about that person. They're representing someone else to us. And if it's the twin, which for me, I'm pulling in the energy the whole time. And one of the reasons I'm resonating with this person is because they remind me of me. And it is like almost a mirror. You know, they are mirroring something back to me. They're showing something in me. And the love or connection you're feeling is actually not about that person. It's about the person that I was looking for, or someone else might be looking for. And it's a connection which can get very distorted very quickly, and we can get very trapped into a relationship dynamic which we think we want. And I can only speak from my experience. I was in that dynamic, and the other person had the same issue as me.
Oh my God.
And that there, then straight away you have an entanglement. You have very unhealthy relationship.
And a very strong bond.
And you could potentially have trauma bonding. And when that happens, it's just not on one side, it's on both sides.
Oh my God.
Suddenly you could be going down a pathway that you might not get back from.
Wow.
So
that is interesting. Both partners having the same challenge. I didn't think of that. Wow. And this actually is shown in the field, right? When we're doing the family constellations and someone is representing us, and we're wondering why is our partner not looking at us, but actually, are we actually looking at that partner, or are we actually looking at our lovely twin that is not even there in the first place, at least in the physical realm?
And it's actually so clear in a constellation. If you were to have your client, if I was actually looking what my issue is, if a facilitator was to place, say, my partner opposite, and then place someone else, they might not know what that other person being is representing. It will become clear. And if the facilitator feels that energy and then names it, if the constellation moves and the people are in that place are feeling that energy, usually you have someone representing you. If you then are turning to this other energy and you feel the same and you move away from the partner, that's where you really need to be looking. And it just shows then where the dynamic is actually and where you need to be looking. And it's not just vanishing twin syndrome, it happens in relationships a lot where we can look to someone else and we're trying to heal something in us. And this is probably the finest example, if you like, of that.
Wow, oh my God. Also, I wanted to ask you, some people experience certain symptoms, and not because they experience these symptoms that I'm going to mention now, it means that they are a survivor twin, but this could be something to explore further. So some people experience that they get different jobs at the same time, they study different things at the same time. Maybe they create different business at the same time, or they buy different, like more than just for themselves, just also for your twin. So you spend more money than what you wanted. Like, let's say I want to get a pair of boots and I end up buying 2 pairs of boots. Why? And that kind of thing. I definitely been everywhere in all those examples. What do you know in your experience with your clients, with yourself?
I know for myself, there are definitely occasions when I'm buying something, I'm looking at something and I'll buy 2 of it. And even as you're saying that, it just resonates with me. It's like, I've done this so many times. And I use the excuse, I'm buying this for myself, but I'm not actually buying it for myself. And I quite often don't even use whatever it is or wear it. It just stays somewhere. So it's totally spot on, whatever the object or thing is that you're doing. And actually working with people, there is... Can you ask the question again for me? Because there's a quality in that, which was, I'm checking with me first to answer the question, but then I'm thinking about other people. So just ask me again if you can, with regards specifically to other people.
So have you been told by other people who have experienced something like this, they believe they are the survivor twin, or they suspect they have any of these symptoms?
My direct experience has been they haven't been aware of it. So, but once they become aware of it, everything starts fitting into place.
That makes a lot of sense.
And this is, I think, one of the keys, which is awareness. So you almost have to work backwards. So whenever I've worked with someone, the first port of call isn't, I think it could be this, can we explore this? It's like, these are my symptoms. I'm feeling this sense of loneliness in the world. I feel like there's someone or something else, but they can't name what it is. So my experience has been then, and that's one way that it can manifest. And then it comes down to when you're facilitating, you can place someone to represent something that's missing. And then I'm working with the energy in the field. What is the information that's being shared? And if I feel a resonance from that with a client, and it's happened in a workshop, happened with a client, then you can name it and just suggest, and then how the constellation moves shows if it's true or not.
Exactly.
And I think that's quite an important thing to be aware of, because, and one particular person I can think of, once it was shown, it's just changed absolutely everything. It suddenly explained everything that had been happening in their life up until that point. But it wasn't until that one key moment when it was named in the space that it was just, everything just went, just slotted into place. And it only took seconds, because the energy then shifts and changes much faster than the mind can try and work it out. And going back to talking about the emotions, the body, which is the barometer of your soul, feels it first. I know there's a lot of talk where the mind tells the body what to feel. But when you use your body like that as a barometer, the information that's coming, your mind is on catch up.
I love it. Yeah.
And that for me is when you go, okay, now we know what we're working with.
I love it. That makes total sense, because sometimes you just know it. You just have a feeling and you just don't know why, but you just know, and you feel it so strongly, you choose to believe it. And then the feel actually backs that up, which is the beauty of this. I love it. That's incredible. Wow. Awareness is key. I was going to ask you, how could becoming aware of what is actually happening, what happened, what was the emotional root of the cause of the symptoms that a person are having, the challenges? How is knowing all this, becoming aware of this, going to help the person? Because we are still going to feel sometimes the loneliness, maybe the lack of energy, like half of us is pulling us down, but we need to get up and go through the day. How is becoming aware helping us to deal with the symptoms?
I actually think the most important thing for that is we can then make healthy choices. Healthy choices for ourselves in all areas of our life. So that can be a healthy choice about, well, literally our health. We can then focus actually on ourselves, and we can give to ourselves rather than this outward looking a lot of the time. And quite often we're looking for a partner to fill something in us. And actually nobody can ever fill anything here. The only person that can fill here is ourselves. So for me, we can start making a healthy choice about our relationship with ourselves. And to a certain extent, you can call off, at some level, a search. Even if it's subconscious, this search that we're doing through a work placement, through objects we're buying, or a person, however it shows up, we aren't then searching for something outside us. Once you have the awareness of what the issue is about, suddenly you have power over it. Ultimately, though, you still have a choice. And you can still make the same choice again and again and again until, as a very famous person said, you can keep making the same mistakes.
That's right.
Or you can make a choice and go, actually, I'm going to keep repeating this pattern. So particularly in a relational sense with someone, I'm actually going to make a healthy choice and choose someone that actually isn't representing someone to heal something in me. I want to be in a relationship with someone where actually it's about the relationship with that person, not that they're representing a mother or a twin or someone else. So I feel for me, that's probably the most important thing. And also when you become conscious of something, the subconscious drivers aren't then running the show.
That's key.
And when we're trying to get to the root cause of something, we can dance around the surface a lot, but this is still the conscious area. When we dive in using constellations, the journey, whatever modality it is, I mean, those are ones I happen to be trained in and love. There are other modalities which we'll be able to explore as well. I just happen to have chosen these because I personally feel they are the most amazing tools I've ever found.
I agree with that.
And the reason why I do is because for me, they get to the root cause of what the issue is. And
in the emotional.
The emotional realm. And so the journey for me is about the emotional realm. The constellations, it's showing where the root cause is. But there's a key here, which is, like I was saying before, we're not trying to change what's happened. Can we look on this situation from a place of love? And then when we can look whatever has happened with love, because with the twin syndrome, there could be some guilt at us surviving. And actually there could be resentment or anger targeted here, and also towards the twin or a parent, whatever happened that they didn't make it. And there is one facet about this, which I think is important to remember, is sometimes we can have a death wish.
Yes.
And we might want to join that twin. So it's a sensitive topic, this, but suicide,
yes,
and quite closely into depression,
yes,
someone might want to commit suicide out of love and loyalty because they want to join their twin. There's a pull there. The twin is not going to pull you, but you feel drawn to that twin. And some people could take that step.
yes,
In the same way, when you're looking in the family system, if someone else you're looking to who's died, you want to join them in death. There's a death wish.
yeah,
And so specifically with the Vanishing Twin Syndrome, when you become conscious of it, that subconscious drive, which could lead you to take your own life to join them,
yeah,
what feels like out of love, but it's actually an unhealthy choice. You can become conscious of it. And in that moment, then, I have to just feel in, because if I picture there a twin there, that twin wants you to live. They don't want you to join them. They want you to live. And actually the way to honor that twin, to reconnect with the love, is to live. You can carry them in your heart, but you honor them by living.
that's right.
And but we can get tied into a loyalty where we get subconsciously drawn here. So the leverage you get by becoming conscious of these issues means that drive, then you can make a different choice. You can step into your life fully, rather than maybe having one step over here, or always maybe being drawn over to someone who's actually not alive. And when you take that step in your life, this soul is free to go, because there's a bit of a double-edged sword here where we think they're holding on to us, but actually we're holding on to them in this realm. When we let go of them, we can live our life fully.
I love this. My God, I definitely relate to this, Richard. Before I got to know about this, I just wondered all the time, was wondering, why am I so sad? Why am I so sad? And I had so many different therapists, always investing in myself and into little example. And you know what they told me? All of them told me the same thing. But your life is amazing, Rebecca. You have the best partner, you have your dream, you work doing what you love, you're helping people. What else could you ask for? And I'm like, yeah, but I feel guilty because I got all these things and I still feel sad. Like I don't really have the drive to live, really, honestly. And I feel guilty for this. And as soon as I worked on this, became aware, I cried a lot, I changed the meaning, like you said, I let him go, I took up space. I just felt really grounded. I could say and shout, now I don't want to leave, now I want to stay. And I could not say that before, really, and I feel guilty. I would not even want to stay for anyone or for anything. It's just really mind-blowing, the internal change that this awareness can give you.
I'll just actually hearing you say, I'll just share one thing, because this happened this morning. I knew we were going to be speaking today. And this quality, I think I mentioned it to you before about when we think we've healed something. Because my experience has been, we have to look from so many different perspectives, because this can affect us in so many different ways. And still this morning, tears came to me because I knew we'd be talking about this. And I sat with it and I let the tears come. And the difference this time was the tears were just of love, because I could feel that soul there. I can feel connected and still feel that I'm living my life. So there's still emotion there, there's still a connection there. It's not like you cut the connection. The connection is always there. We're always connected with our ancestors. So for me, I just wanted to share that, because even when we're working on this and we feel like we've worked through so much of this, and I like to say I'm working through my issues, have I healed that? I I've healed a lot of it. And yet there's still the emotional connection. And actually, when I allowed it to come, it actually felt like a loving connection. And I could just honor that and go, I love you. And I feel that connection. And the tears were just then allowing the emotion to come through without me then attaching anything to it.
That's really, really key, the detachment. Yeah, I love that, sure. Now that you mentioned this, some people have said that they have a lot of fear for losing their partners when their partners actually are fully alive and happy and healthy, and they don't know why. And I'm not saying this could be the reason, but I definitely relate to this. In the past, I had this issue, and now I can see that it could be for this, because now I'm okay. Whatever happens, I'm okay. So that's also could be another symptom or another clue. Just a clue.
It could be a clue.
Potential clue.
Yeah, and it's something definitely worth bearing in mind. And I think just being aware of this means it's something else you can look at and go, well, actually, and it will be revealed if it's true or not.
Exactly.
So just try it. I mean, if anybody is struggling, and like you say with a partner, if there's a fear of, will I lose my partner? There might be an element of this, but just test it out and just see if there's some truth in it. And you can still work through this with someone as well. Once you have become aware of this, then you still have choices to make. And from what you just said, you can't ever lose anyone is something I always keep hold of, because if a partner goes and it's not meant to be, but you're still connected with them in some shape or form, in the same way as the twin, your ancestors, you always connect with them. They are always here. So I just thought I'd share that in light of what you just said. So the fear there might be not about that partner. It's still maybe a fear about losing people. So there is possibly still an issue. And this could be what the issue is.
It could be another issue.
It could be another issue, but just stay open. Just stay open to this being a possibility, I guess.
I am curious, Richard, to hear about your new book coming. Your new book.
I have got a new book coming. Thank you for asking. The book, it's called One Voice, and it's actually a book which it's autobiographical, and it's actually me probably being vulnerable. I've been in so many therapeutic environments, and I never saw myself, for example, ever leading, facilitating workshops. And the actual book is about me, the journey I had to go on to work through my issues and trace my biological family. That journey, the issues it brought up, the issues I then had in childhood, which I then had to work through, and eventually leads into the constellation work that I then did as a result of then meeting that family and actually working through a lot of these issues we've been talking about. So it's written as a travelogue because all of this has taken place as I've traveled around the world, because my biological family are from New Zealand. So I am a Kiwi by birth. And I never had intention, in the same way as actually running a workshop, it just became a calling. I never had any intention to write a book. The reason I've written the book is hopefully people can understand a bit more about the type of things that might come up in life, how to work with them, and to show there is a different way to work through our issues. And for me, the medical profession didn't work, if I'm really honest. It will work for some people. For me, this is not where I found the answers. I found the answers in different realms. So the book reflects that journey. And my prayer for the book is, it was originally written for people who are adopted. And this is my speciality. I love working with people who are adopted. This is my expertise. That said, we all experience similar issues that adoption brings, be it anxiety, depression, separation, abandonment. We all have these to a greater or lesser extent. And my prayer for the book would be, in writing it, if it reaches somebody and it touches something in them and they can resonate with something I've written, that then it sparks something in them. It could be, actually, I never thought of adoption from that perspective. I've never thought there might be this underlying in my subconscious. This could be driving the show. This person has shown there is something different. It is possible to maybe do something different, live something different. So if one person gets something from the book, resonates and can help them in their life, then I'm really happy. And the book has been a very cathartic process for me, because in writing the book, so many of the other issues I thought I had worked on, or new ones I've had to look at, have come up. So the book's been an organic process of mopping up, I should say. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to share the book with people. And I'll be interested to see what people make of it, because the people who've read it so far, which a lot have been men, quite interestingly, purely by default, there must be something I've been doing in all the work I've done, particularly with emotions, because it's touched men and they've all said, you made me cry. And I'm like, wow. For me, that's huge, because it means it's touching them not in the head or in the story. Emotionally, something is moving in them. And with regard to this topic we've been discussing, these are, for me, where we start doing the really deep work, where we can touch the emotion in someone. That means we've reached them.
Yes.
And one of my prayers with working with adopted people, but also if men can get in touch with that aspect, man to man, then boy, do you know what?
Yeah.
That's huge.
That's amazing. You are inspiring men to be vulnerable, to get in touch with their feelings and allow them to emerge and to look at them. Maybe have a conversation with them. I love it.
With love.
With love. Always with love. Always aligned with love. And I'm also curious, Richard, to hear a little bit about your shamanic work. Can you tell us about that?
The shamanic work was actually born out of my family constellation training. I'm trained in a way, I was trained by a shaman. So he works with the magic, and I then went to the person who trained him in shamanic healings, to be trained by him specifically in shamanic healings. But this came up as part of my training, and I started realizing how when we work in this sort of way with constellations, we look in the family system, and then when you do shamanic healings, you're working with such old information. And I wanted to know, like, being adopted, I can know this about my family through constellations, I can learn so much. But what goes beyond, what goes further back than that? And I just felt really called and drawn to that. And my first reason for doing any of this was to look at myself, work on myself, work through my issues. The same with the shamanic healings, again, look really in depth, what's going on in my system, where am I carrying trauma, where am I carrying issues, and looking way back. And the shamanic healings now, when I work with people, it's about then looking in their system, and actually it works very much intuitively with constellations on one side. I must have the emotional journey on one side, and then for me, through my Kiwi heritage, I love working with the Maori wisdom and nature. So these all start blending together. And the shamanic work is very much about how in tune we are with nature, how every movement we make in the world is linked to nature, how nature is showing us the whole time. And then when you start playing with this and getting into the shamanic realms, we start finding how we are so connected at such a deep level. Like, I'm connected here with you by having this conversation with the microphone. When I walk outside into nature, there's a resonance, because ultimately I will return to nature. I'm part of that. And the ancestors that have gone before me are in nature. So how can I not be connected? And that energy is what drew me to shamanic healings. And that's where, if you want to look, say, 1,000 years back, you could start going back that many generations and find out issues that your ancestors were working through that you are still carrying the resonance of. And it could be you have a deep desire to travel. You might find a connection back there, but why is it you're trying to travel? Who you may be trying to reach? And when you look in the shamanic realm, you can just start healing those parts of you so the drive isn't being driven by someone else. And actually there's trauma that we carry that goes back so far. And shamanic healings are the same as constellations. You cannot change what's happened in the past. But can you look with love on those ancestors who maybe 1,000, 2,000 years ago, whatever they were doing, whatever, there could have been someone who was killing, the part of the tribe, whatever the story was, it could have been a sacrifice. But you're carrying the trace of that, which you're not going to find just looking at this topic with my mother or father.
Yes.
And that is where, in the shamanic realm, we're going to look there, and then can you look with love on those ancestors in the same way as constellations? But it's in you. So ultimately, the shamanic work is bringing it all back. You are part of nature. You're part of your ancestors. You're part of that realm, and being open to what that's showing you. And then where is it in your body? Where is it affecting you? And then you can clear it. But you can't change it. It's like, can you look with love? So I would look at that and go, okay, I can look with love there no matter what they did. I honour them totally from the bottom of my heart.
This opens another podcast.
And
I'm going to, I'm practicing, I'm fasting today. I'm going to contain myself for the next podcast.
I would love to talk more about that.
Let's do it. I really want to ask you the question, but how can people contact you, Richard? If they want to work with you, they want to ask you more questions about this, maybe a potential, I don't know. How can people contact you, stay in touch with you?
The best way to contact me is via my website, which is familyconstellationsTherapy.com. My email is on there. My contact details are on there, including my mobile. My email address is on there, info@familyconstellationsTherapy.com. People can find out about me, the type of work I'm involved in, more details of constellations there as well. So they're the two main areas. I am a little bit social media shy, I'm going to be honest. So you probably won't find me on social media. It is an area I'm exploring right now. So they're the two main areas they can get in touch with me. And I will work one-to-one with people. I do run workshops. I've got 2 workshops coming up at the end of this month, for example. One in Brighton, one in Bovington near Hemel Hempstead. So you can find details of those on my website. And all I say to people is get in touch, because I offer a free 30-minute consultation. That's just an invitation to just connect with me. Let's see if there is actually something here that you resonate with me. First of all, you trust me, you want to work with me, and then we just take it from there. So it's just an invitation to come and just look. I will be putting together also next year 4 workshops out in nature. So that for me is taking this work, working in nature, working with constellations, with shamanic healings, the journey. So the plan is to do that 1 in each season.
Okay.
So that's the plan. So people can find out about that if they message me directly as well.
I need to know those dates. Block my diary. Perfect. Richard, thank you for coming and sharing all your experience and personal experiences as well, not just professional, with us. And I take your word and we're looking to the next podcast about your shamanic healing work.
I will look forward to that. And thank you so much for inviting me today as well. It's been an absolute pleasure. And it's a passion of mine. So I've really enjoyed sharing it with you and talking about something that I love. So thank you.
My pleasure.